This is I Read Comic Book Podcast. I am your host, Mike Rapin. This week, I am joined by two one-dimensional... No, I can't do that the entire episode. This is the I Read Comic Books Podcast.
Mike, get out of here.
This is the I Read Comic Books Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Rapin. We are here for a very special episode on Patreon today, where we are covering Kraven the Hunter 2024 movie. This week, I am joined by the one and only Kara Shimborski.
Hey.
And our pal from the Next Issue podcast, Danny.
I went to school in New York, so I have an American accent.
Listen, we're going to get into it. Like I said, we were talking about Kraven the Hunter, which came out in 2024. This is a movie directed by J.C. Chandor, written by Richard Wenk, Art Markham, and Matt Holloway, starring Aaron Taylor Johnson, Ariana DeBose, Fred Hesher, Alessandro Nivola, Christopher Abbott, Russell Crowe, and a bunch of other people. We're going to be talking about all of them today. Quick synopsis of this movie is essentially a man...
You can't even say it.
Kira's, I can't even get through it.
All right.
Go ahead, Kara.
A boy child, a teenage boy, is out hunting on the African savannah with his Russian mobster father and weakling younger brother when he is mauled by a male lion, which is incorrect because lionesses do the primary hunting in a lion pack. And the lion drags him into like a random clearing just in time for a girl visiting her Ghanaian grandmother to give him a magical herbs and roots serum that causes him to come back to life as something more. And then we cut forward 16 years to our titular character has been hanging out in a hut, a geodesic dome of some kind in the woods where he's been avoiding his father and killing bad guys in his free time. And that's kind of where we join our story.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I think that's a good place to start. I have a lot of thoughts about where the story goes from there, so I think we'll get into it. But Kara, you said before we started recording that you had a hot take of some kind you wanted to kick us off with, which I'm very scared about. So please start there.
Oh, you should be scared, Mike. I have the hottest of spicy hot takes. Kraven is the most realistic superhero film. You might have thought it was one of the Batman movies, but you're wrong. It's actually Kraven, because if you take a minute and you think about the implications of how things would go if superheroes were real, if somebody actually had a super serum in their system and was trying to figure out how to make their place in the world, you might get something like Kraven, where all of the movements that are designed to look cool actually look goofy, where the bad guys should be intimidating, but instead they're just silly and petty, yet somehow still have a grasp on power. You get sneaking up behind bad guys on the stairs because the music and the costumes don't match the drama of the situation. You get random lawyers deciding to skirt the rules in order to bring justice to felons. It was really a work of art. I see what they were doing. I think they failed at what they were trying to do, but instead, they gave us the most realistic depiction of a superhero maybe ever.
Yeah. And I have to credit Sony for that somehow. I have to give Sony at least credit for making the movie, I guess. So I guess to kick things off, I kind of want to try to start and go through this a little bit chronologically. We can start with the opening of this movie where we find Kraven in this jail somewhere deep in Russia where he's supposed to kill some guy. I went into the movie, I'll just say, thinking, oh man, this is going to be bad. And then we get this opening scene and I was like, hold on a second. Is this going to be like kind of dumb and fun? Like I can totally gel with that. So I'm curious, what did you guys think of the opening of this movie before we got into 25 minutes of seemingly unnecessary backstory?
So I watched the first 8 minutes that Sony put out, which was that whole sequence up until he gets in the plane and we get the obligatory turnaround shirt off, showing off that I haven't ate carbs in months, shot of Aaron Taylor Johnson. But I really like it. I thought it was, I love the way he moves, which we'll definitely get more into.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was like, oh, cool. This is kind of like a little heist. I love heist movies. So like get in there. And this stupid thing with the roommate, like if I'm still here 3 days. Yeah. He's like, but I won't sit with you at lunch because you got to be petty.
Yeah.
I really enjoy the opening of this movie.
Yeah, Caro, just seeing that first bit, what were your thoughts I mean, I guess after all of the negative hype that I think was going into this movie, what did you think just in those first couple minutes?
Well, Mike, I'm the wrong person to be asking this question because I was the person irrationally hyped for Kraven, even though I didn't know anything about the character. Of course, now, because I recorded an episode with Paul and Nick about a Kraven comic book, I have read a grand total of 1 Kraven comic book. So, but, who was this movie for? Because how many Kraven fans might there be? I told my colleagues at work that I was going to see this movie, and all of them responded in Slack, Google's Kraven. Like, there's so little awareness of this character. So, like,
sure.
I see why Sony would have posted the first 8 minutes to try to be like, oh, if you like action movies, you might like this one. But, honestly, going back to what Danny was saying about the ab shot, knowing the kind of things that male actors have to do to get their bodies to look like that, it just made me sad. I wasn't like turned on or like attracted to him in any ways. I was just like, oh my God, that man might have like disordered eating and he definitely didn't drink water for like 2 hours before this shoot. And I just kind of felt bad for him. And I think they were going for like, look at this hunk of masculinity. And I was just like, somebody give this poor man like a glass of water and maybe a steak. Like, come on.
Yeah. I totally feel you on that. This is where I'm just going to say somebody at home should take a tally of this. This to me, as soon as he got on the plane is where the entire movie started to fall apart, right? Like this thing, and I'm not saying that in like the sense that like, maybe it is in the sense that the plot itself disintegrates right in front of your eyes as you're watching the film. It suddenly is like the screen was like flittering apart in front of my eyes as he gets on this plane, puts on a headset, talks to a very clear voice for some reason, who they have like a rapport. There's like a rapport between him and this pilot. And then he later takes the headphones off and continues to talk to said person, which begs the question of, was there supposed to be another person on that plane? Was the pilot supposed to be like a person of interest that was actually in the story before they decided to gut this entire film and leave a husk of a story that ended up to being 2 hours and 7 minutes long? Because that is where the first moment in the movie I went, that's a little weird. Maybe we're going to meet that character later, because that's what you do when you have a conversation with a person on a plane like that, that seems intimately familiar with what the hell you were just doing. And then that person disappears from the entire story and doesn't come back even at the end when he gets on a plane later. That person should have been there. So the movie started to fall apart then. I was like, okay, maybe weird editing. We'll call that. We'll figure it out later because we're 10 minutes into this film. And then we got a 20-minute flashback that I kept thinking, boy, this is going on for way too long.
But Mike, how can we have an origin story film if you don't know every intricate detail of the origin story?
Sure. Yeah. This is the thing. I thought that the flashback was kind of interesting, right? I thought that like it had the potential to be interesting just to show the dynamic between him and his brother. Like, yes, everything could have been condensed significantly, but nonetheless, I was like, okay, I'll roll with this. But when we got into him learning to be the hunter for like 10 minutes or however long it was, I was like, this is filler, isn't it? This is just filler. And this is, again, the movie is falling apart in front of my eyes, and yet the film continues to go through the projector onto the screen. I couldn't understand how it was still going. And again, all of this is hindsight. Obviously, I didn't realize how bad it was actually going to be until later. But I mean, all of that flashback stuff, all I could think of was, why does young Kraven sound like Timothée Chalamet? That is the only thing I could think about.
Because he went to school in New York.
Oh, he went to school in New York. Right. Oh, that's what it is.
We just got to explain away why there isn't like a heavy Russian accent the whole film, because the character of Kraven is Russian. Or origin story supposed to be. I know that because I've read one Kraven comic.
Yep. Yeah. Him and his brother Dmitri, also known as Demi, or Dema or Dima or Doma. No. I'm saying all the pronunciations that happened in the movie.
Oh.
So I just want to make sure we're clear on that because Aaron Taylor Johnson couldn't keep that straight. I'm nitpicking. I'm sorry. But the weirdest nickname to give to a kid, because I was like, who's Dima? Oh, his brother. Shit, right.
I think that's like a Russian thing, though, like taking the name Dmitri and like Dima's like the pet version of that.
I'm sure.
I just can't wait to finally meet Mike in person and just flick him in the ear.
Oh, yeah. Gonna be our thing. That's how you guys treat your siblings too, right? You just flick them in the ear with a full amount of intensity, because what a weird
especially thing. After he got his powers. That last one probably really hurt Dmitri.
Yeah. Ooh, fair point. Yeah. No, the flashback was too long, and the flashback also introduced us to the character Calypso, who I'm not familiar with at all, but I could tell from the way that they were introducing her that she is some kind of Marvel superhero, that if I was more of a Spider fan, I would be like, oh my God, they made it about Calypso. Mm-hmm. Little did I know that little Calypso would grow up to be Ariana DeBose. And like, I didn't look up anything about this movie before I went in. So as soon as Ariana shows up as like grown up Calypso on screen, I was like, ma'am, you are an Oscar winner. What are you doing here?
Is she? Yeah, honestly, she must have been there for the paycheck. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Danny.
No, yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Like, I was like, I saw West Side Story. What's happening here? Why is her role... and this is probably where Mike is going, so diminished. Like, I did have a little question that I wrote for as soon as Kara, I need a little bit of for you to weigh in on Calypso's outfits throughout the film. Because I thought,
are we talking about like the scenes where like she would be wearing a one set of clothing in one scene, and then they would cut away, and then they'd cut back and she'd be in a different set of clothing? Or
Danny, I think we're coming back to the fundamental question about this movie that Mike already brought up, which is, was there a better film on the cutting room floor? Because it felt like, and this is like, watching something like the Oscars where they go into all the different categories of filmmaking, I remember being younger and being like, well, what's the difference between a director and an editor and cinematographer? Aren't they doing the same thing? And this film is the first time where I was like, editing matters. Editing will make or break your film, because there were definitely elements of something better, but like the timing was off, the pacing was off. There would be like a random line and the cut like didn't make sense. Like it felt like a rough draft. It felt like a rough draft that went live. We haven't even talked about Russell Crowe yet. So like part of this like backstory flashback is just to let Russell Crowe be on camera for an egregious amount of time. Speaking of somebody who's there for the paycheck, good job, Russell. I really appreciate you.
Like, this is the thing. Russell Crowe, I felt like did a pretty good job, because like, what is Russell Crowe good at? Being like a big, hulking, demeaning, angry dude. Like, they cast a great person for him. He did a fantastic Russian accent, as far as I'm concerned. He was believable as like intimidating, and especially when you put him side by side with the actor who played adult Dmitri, it was like it's this humongous man just sitting next to this small child of an adult. It was perfect. Like they really balanced that super well. Which again, there's bones in this movie of something actually really good. It just doesn't deliver. And Calypso is another example. Clearly a character that they had a lot more plans for, that it just got stripped out, because I couldn't tell if it was the actor or actress, Ariana DeBose, just like just phoning it in the entire time, or the fact that like all of her scenes felt like reshoots to me. Like they were just like really, really last minute. Because her heart did not feel in it at all. And I'm like, Oscar nominated, Oscar winning actress. Like this is unbelievable. Like just how one-dimensional and awful this character was. Because I feel like Calypso clearly was supposed to have more going on. Instead, she's just like, I need you to get me connections about something, even though I've spent the last 16 years as a hunter, and I've had no problem getting anywhere, because I definitely am by myself. I definitely don't have a team that lives on my compound in Russia. That's for sure. It's just me, but I need you to help me with this thing. Again, it just like, it doesn't click. Like there's something there, and I'm just so mad about it, because I really wanted her to be great. I really wanted him to be great. Like it's all there, just someone just didn't leave it in. No, I'm just so mad about that.
I personally think that this is an editing thing. So we exit the 20-minute long flashback.
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
we get to the point where we find out that Kraven has a list. If you're on the list, there's only one way you get off the list. Kind of thing. So, and he's going to ask Ariana DeBose for help, and he somehow figured out that she's the one who essentially like brought him back to life back when he was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
And now she's like a big shot lawyer, and she knows how to like find all the criminals and bring them down. And he's like, I got you a present. I murdered this dude in prison for you. You didn't ask me. And she's like, I did not ask you. So she's like, I'll think about it. And that's
all that dialogue via ADR, because everything was added in, which did not help their performance.
No.
Everything was just post added or change. And this is kind of going back to what Mike and Kara saying, like a lot of this stuff was put in afterwards. So like obviously when you slap something on top of what you've already made, it's not gonna look the same way that it should.
Mm-hmm.
And yet even with all that, I still had a really good time. So let's keep going.
So we're still seeing like it's been 16 years, but the relationship dynamics are still there. Dimitri, the younger brother, is still perceived by Russell Crowe, the like toxic masculine patriarch of this crime family, to be a little weakling. He's singing at a nightclub, but he's singing so perfectly, and like all these other stars, it's almost like he's a chameleon.
No. What?
And we get to there's like a long gap between fight scenes and parkour scenes in this. It's like you wait a long time for action to happen, which is okay with me because I want to see more like character stuff happening. If only there were character things happening in this movie. But it's this is the part of the movie where I started analyzing it while watching it instead of just letting it wash over me, because as soon as Kraven went to Calypso to ask for favors / help, I was just like, Batman would never.
Well, the thing is, he asked her for help, and I couldn't figure out why she would be the right person to ask for help, right? Like,
because she brought him back to life, and she has a special set of skills.
But what are the skills? Her ability to use a cell phone?
She has a phone. Yeah, she has a phone.
She's got connections. She has the databases. She has the underworld contacts, Mike.
I would have just liked one scene to show any of that, or just something other than just it happening. That is the thing that I struggled with the most, is I was just like, wait, why is he going to her? What connections does she have? Who's this random guy that she ends up calling, who ends up turning on him and working for the Foreigner, a character that I really wanted to see more of? It turns out he's working for the Rhino. The only real through line for the movie outside of like the family dynamic is just like this one guy once said, "You could be my partner," and then Russell Crowe said no, and then he just asked every single other character in the movie to be his partner. But I couldn't figure it out, and I'm so mad because there was definitely something there to give her reason to have all of it, but it just got cut.
They do call her 3 times at least an investigative attorney, which I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's a kind of attorney.
Yeah.
But it's like, wait, why not make her like a journalist or any other profession that might have more connections to dig into the underground?
Because journalists can't have that wardrobe, Danny, because they're not making the money that a lawyer is making.
Yeah, old media. We saw the old media on the computer, which I was like, Daily Bugle, they got it in.
They at least got the Daily Bugle in.
I got to talk about the Daily Bugle for a second. So we know, because we are insufferable nerds who have a comic book podcast, that Kraven is a Spider-Man villain. But if you don't know that, you will not know that from this film. There is absolutely no spider connection in this film, and the opportunity was the Daily Bugle homepage, because they're very clearly, like, almost the full screen is looking at articles on various news sources. The first one is the Daily Bugle. I think even a passing Spider fan would know the Daily Bugle. And the opportunity was right there to have like a little like side column that very clearly has a picture of Spider-Man that says like Spider-Man, like bust crime ring. So you know it's in the same universe, but they didn't do that. So why would the casual movie fan know that this is a Spider-Man universe, know that this is a Spider-Man villain, and therefore make the connection later when Kraven's hit by the fear toxin and all of a sudden spiders start falling from the sky and you're just like, how is this supposed to be important to me if I'm not already a nerd? How is this for the casual viewer in any way, shape, or form?
This is a combination of like MCU problem and also licensing, right? Where Sony probably doesn't have any right to show anything that says Spider-Man in it, right? And also, I think Sony also probably thought that, oh, they've seen all the other Spider-Man movies. They know what the Daily Bugle is, right? It's like when you go into watching Miss Marvel and you're supposed to have all of the previous Marvel chronology set up in your head. It's like, wait. I didn't watch half of those movies. Who's this character again? You know, I think that's maybe where it was coming from, but I agree with you. I knew it because I'm an insufferable nerd, as you explain, but yes, the casual fan probably would not. And I've got some thoughts for the end of this movie about how does this even connect back to the Spider Universe? But yeah, they had the opportunity there and they totally missed it. Yeah.
I'll tell you, Mike, this is where I get fuzzy on the chronology because everything from here on out is just things happen and then all of a sudden we're in another fight scene. Yeah, well, there's a monastery.
We had some stuff where, you know, they find out where this monastery has a guy that is after
because they kidnapped his brother.
Before we get into the monastery, I do want to highlight probably one of my favorite things of the film. The relationship between Sergei and Dmitri. Sergei is Kraven's actual
name. Yeah.
I love all the brother stuff. Like, it just really works for me. Like, he goes to he calls him on the phone and sounds like his dad, which is hilarious because he knows immediately it's not him, right? He goes to visit. We know that he visits him at least every birthday, at least. And then that's kind of where things take off because he goes to see him for his birthday. They spend the night out. They get drunk. They're ambushed by the dad, who is wearing a different cravat from the ones we've seen in past 10 seasons. the cravat budget in this film is insane.
Through the roof.
And then they have a night out. I love the whole, like, he sings so many songs, like Tony Bennett. I think he sings what's the One Direction singer that went off on his own?
Harry Styles, Danny.
Yeah, he sings a Harry Styles song.
Okay.
So that kind of tells you like also what year they are, right? So very intricate filmmaking here. It was
you like Tony Bennett. I don't trust people who don't like Tony Bennett.
yeah. So, but after that, his brother gets kidnapped. It was supposed to be him. Maybe not. I don't know. The movie's not really sure. And we get probably one of my favorite, like the car chase is unbelievable. I love the way
barefoot parkour.
Dude, he was barefoot sliding around on concrete, and I know it's a movie, and I was like, my butthole was clenching. I was like, oh, that's just layers of skin coming off your body.
Yeah, like just in the most sloppy way too. Like he gets down from the building in the most sloppy way. He just goes up against the windows, destroys everything on his way down.
Throws himself and just crashes.
I'm telling you, the most realistic superhero film.
Totally.
This is how a dude would go through this. It's not perfectly choreographed. You're getting from A to B. You've got a target. You don't have your shoes. You gotta go.
Captain America could never.
Yeah.
And then he has to stop the helicopter.
Hit his Captain America moment for a second. Did you see it?
In the same fashion.
Yeah.
He almost does. He takes out a few guys and he spears someone through the helicopter.
Insane.
Amazing.
This scene was very like, they took that one scene with like Captain America and T'Challa like going at it.
Running.
And they were just like, what if we had Aaron Taylor Johnson do both things but not wear shoes?
Yeah, I wish the movie was more of this John Wick style type of like action, and then just get rid of some of the other stuff in between that doesn't work. Or maybe that's what it originally was, and they're like, oh, we gotta we got to make this longer. We can't just throw out a 90-minute film that's
should have been 90 minutes. I love a good 90-minute film. Who doesn't love a 90-minute film?
So they take his brother to this place, this monastery, right on this cliffside, which is a perfect action set piece. He has to infiltrate. We get the fun little, I'm going to sneak literally right behind these guys. They're not going to know that I'm there moment. Big old fight scene.
If you played Arkham Knight or any of those Arkham games from Batman, you know how much fun it is sneaking around those bad guys. Like, you can't hear me, you can't see me. I'm right behind you.
I have not played Arkham Knight, but literally my notes for that scene are: this is Batman. This is showing us how silly the concept of Batman actually is, because a dude crouching down and sneaking past other dudes is objectively silly. If you take out the dramatic music, you remove the Hans Zimmer score, you remove the cowl and the shadows, it's just Aaron Taylor Johnson hunching down and trying not to be seen.
But like, here's the thing that makes this movie work, though, is the hunting. Literally, Kraven doing what Kraven does best. Like, he's a mix of Wolverine and Batman, right? Where he has this potential to be really cool. He can do all the big action set pieces. He can also do all of the stealthy stuff. If the movie was just like a series of those moments where he had to piece his life together in between this kill list because of some red, like, bullshit timer that he's got, like, oh man, I've only got like 2 years to live or something, like, make that the movie where he's like, I have to do all of these things, but also my family's falling apart, but I refuse to actually go and acknowledge it because of all this trauma in my past. Like, that's a cool movie. We get a lot of cool action. We can do the combination big explosive scenes as well as a lot of the stealth. And because I think that's where this movie excelled. These were the things they clearly put the most time into.
Yeah.
Like that big chase scene, the him sneaking around the monastery, him going into the jail. I mean, even at the end with the big compound fight where he's got to fight all the guys in the woods and stuff is all really, really like the highlights of this movie for me. It's just that like they couldn't figure out what should have gone between those moments. And then someone like took a lot of glue and silly putty and said, well, we can just kind of stick them together with this, with ADR and aftershoots and call it a movie. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work. But I liked those moments. I thought they were great. Like, my highlight in my review on Letterboxd is just like, let Kraven hunt. Like, please, God.
That's a shirt.
I mean, we'll talk about the end fight scene in a little bit, but this feels like a good moment to say something that I noticed and appreciated, but again was frustrated by, because if you don't know that Kraven's a spider villain, how would you know that from this film? You might think it, because Kraven's physicality is Spider-Man without the suit. He's doing the Spider-Man poses. He's like doing the leaping off buildings. You see him like falling on the ground in like a spider crouch. His movement is all Spider-Man based. It just looks really funny and absurd because he's doing it outside of a spider suit. Like, you're so used to like Spider-Man doing those moves. So in that way, it's interesting that Sony's like setting up this, and maybe I'm just like giving too much credit to the choreography team, but like it feels kind of intentional that's so, it's so Spider-Man coded that they could be setting up this like, oh, they're the even match. They're going to have a misunderstanding and go head to head in some kind of conflict. But they're so similar in terms of strength and mobility, and they're like dark mirrors of one another. But we'll never see that movie because this movie is not doing well, and so I don't know if they'll make more.
And as Kara and anybody that read The Last Hunt now knows, Kraven's ultimate goal is to become Spider-Man and prove that he's better at it than he is.
The setup is right there.
Yeah.
It's like they had the material is right there.
So close.
So they get through the monastery stuff, right? We get the foreigner finally like doing more foreigner stuff, like interesting concept for a character, right? Because we had seen him a little bit earlier, like he was investigating the jailbreak and stuff. We saw him do a pretty cool moment with these police officers who are investigating all these murders in this monastery. I don't think I truly understand what his power is, but Danny,
I don't
you
even
look
care
like you know.
That they didn't explain it. I'm actually, I prefer that they don't explain it, and they're like, he just like looks at you and moves really fast behind you, which is also the silliest thing.
Is like, I don't need to know. I don't need to
Like,
know
No, no,
every little bit of the backstory. Like Kraven's backstory, the backstory flashback could have been in like 10 minutes. I don't need to know. I don't need to know. Give me the more
Yeah.
of the barefoot parkour.
Yeah, but I agree. Like I'm fine with not knowing because it's the big reveal of his motivation, which I wish that we had seen on in the movie. You know, his saying like, I'm working for the Rhino because I want to take this guy down because he killed my boss and I love that guy, which is a great motivation. If only we had seen that scene of Kraven like taking that guy out and then the foreigner maybe being like the person who witnesses it or something like that. And we only ever like see his face and then we get the reveal later and it's like, oh my gosh, who was that person? Blah, blah, blah. Like potential
Get like a little
lost.
gangly teenager in the background with the shades going, oh.
So, yeah, sure. Like it would have been at least something instead of just a throwaway line that he says. And I think at this point we start to get more introduction to the Rhino, right? Who is this nerdy guy? Which like Danny, I'm right there with you where you're going. I freaking loved the idea of this Rhino character. Okay. What a great villain. Oh. He's petty. He's annoying. He's a weirdo. He's like an eccentric that you're like, this is the type of villain that I want. Doesn't need to be some mastermind, like super suave guy. Let him be kind of a dork who's like, I wanted to just be the most powerful man ever. And so I take this thing in my body and I become perfect. You know, like I love that. I absolutely love that. That's not how his powers work. I know how it works, but I'm just saying.
Alessandro Nivola was in a completely different movie. Like he was doing
absolutely.
There's a scene where they walk in and give him bad news about something, and he makes like the weirdest noise.
Oh, that's the only time my theater laughed. Like as collectively was when he made that weird like ha sound. We're like, wait.
He's also. I love how they show how he's so socially inept that even his dog doesn't really like him.
Aww.
Like if your dog doesn't like you, like come on, buddy, like that's on you.
He's definitely was the like perfect weirdo for the movie though, right? Like the villain, they kind of I feel like implied that Russell Crowe is going to be the big villain, but instead he's kind of just like the B plot for Kraven, and so. Him showing up and kind of being this again through line where he's just like, your dad pissed me off once like 20 years ago and I never forgot about that, so I'm going to kill him,
which we saw
greatest origin story for a villain ever. It is like I said, it is petty and it is pathetic, and he did everything that he could to become this perfect being. Like I freaking love it.
Until you said pathetic, I was like, the Rhino's a Scorpio. It's like holding a 20-year grudge.
So I liked it. It's just the execution is so weird. They're kind of just like sitting around for half the movie, just like getting news. It's like I literally thought it was just the Rhino and his little right-hand man was their whole team. That was it. The whole gang was just two dudes. And I was like, there's no way. There's no way we do that.
Sure. I mean, but that's the same as it's the same setup in many of the James Bond films, or Jim Carrey and his lover henchman in the Sonic films. Like you just need
just two evil guys just hanging out. I don't know. I thought that worked. Again, interesting stuff that they could have done. It's just like if it doesn't go anywhere until the very end. And even then, it felt like they had to go that way because they had already put all the money into the CG to make it happen. So
I will say the Rhino gave us probably my favorite Easter egg as somebody that it is like deep into the lore of Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah?
When he says like, yeah, you know, I got my medication from a doctor in New York, Miles Warren. And I was like, that's the Jackal. He's the clone guy. He makes all the clones and he messes around with everyone's genetics. And obviously no one in my theater responded. So I was like, just like, okay, I mean, there wasn't that many people in my theater anyways to respond, but I was like, I think I'm the only one in this theater that knows this, and I don't know if I should be proud or not.
Well, that was one of those name drops where I was like, I understand that was a reference. I don't know what the reference is, but I know that you were saying that for a reason.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I was wondering if they were going to name drop like Osborn for some reason, just because to go like really obvious. But no, that makes total sense. And that is a cool little thing that like Sony is just like, here is your entire meal and one speck of pepper to go on this chicken, just for a little bit of taste. And it's like, what?
And all that just made me wonder, why did they never grab one of the Spider-Man clones to be their Spider-Man? If you don't want to have a Peter Parker and you want to leave Miles Morales to do his animated stuff, Ben Reilly's right there. Well, King Parker might be too close, but Ben Reilly's right there. Like, you could explain that you somehow got this DNA. Whatever. It doesn't. They could explain it away.
That could be in the sequel that will never get made.
Yeah. But okay, so the movie, I guess, from here, kind of, this is where I start to get fuzzy, because it was just like, all right, they have Dimitri. Then the Rhino has Dimitri, and then they're like, we got to go kill Kraven now. So they're like, where's he at? Oh, there's this rare poppy, blah blah blah. It's in
it's in Eastern Siberia. This is where he must be.
Yeah,
it's at his Airbnb.
Yeah, at his big compound that he's got. That's just him. Where for some reason Calypso has begrudgingly agreed to fly there and is not freaking out at all about anything, despite this man kind of just shoving her into a plane and saying, "You're coming to Russia with me." She's like very chill about it. She finds his secret little thing under the most obvious flip up mask you've ever seen on a desk. She presses the button. 10 minutes later, the button gets used as part of the movie I'm just going to skip over the CG moment where they had the back and forth conversation out on some weird pavilion, and Aaron Taylor Johnson says something, and then it cuts back to DeBose, and her face is completely made of computers, and her mouth moves like a bad AI
video.
No. I don't know if you guys caught that, but I
did not catch that.
I think that's when I went to the restroom, because I saw them get to the compound. I was like, oh, great. Quiet moment.
Yeah.
I'm 3 minutes. I'll be back.
Honestly, it'll be worth rewatching on whatever streaming service this comes out, just for that scene to be like, they thought they could get away with that, because I couldn't. I tapped Kelly on the shoulder. I was like, what did you just see that? And she was like, that's what? She was confused.
I have another CGI moment. Maybe CGI moment. I spent the entire film unsure of if the actor who played Dimitri really has arms that small, or if they had intentionally shrunk his arms like Captain America in that like pre-serum moment in the first Avenger. Like, this dude's arms were so tiny compared to his neck and his head that it was like distracting for me, because and then I was like, it feels like they could be CGI'd, but I genuinely can't tell. And it was really just because of that moment in Captain America that I was even thinking about it, because I was like, ooh, they're doing the Captain America thing, and this dude is going to get powers later, and then he's going to be really jacked, and it's going to be like a whole thing. And then that didn't happen. So I was like, okay, does he just have tiny arms?
I think he was in the White Lotus.
Well, if you want to see more of Fred Hechinger, you can watch Gladiator 2, where he was one of the two emperors, the one that wasn't in Stranger Things.
Did he have teeny tiny arms in that?
He is I was
going to say, he's a very slim man.
Okay, I have a note about that. We'll talk about it when we get to like the would be end credit scene that happens right before the credits.
Yeah,
instead.
Mm-hmm. So. Mm-hmm. I guess to get to the end of this then, so we get the big action scene, big huge fight sequence. These guys are like, we're going to hunt down Kraven the Hunter in his humongous multi-mile acre compound. And we're going to bring like 6 bear traps with us, just in case. And they manage to hide them in the forest so that Kraven can then use them against them later.
There's that moment, Mike, where one of the dudes, his head gets trapped in a bear trap, and it's like really graphic. That's the moment I became hyper aware of exactly how many children under the age of 10 were in this movie theater with us. There were several parents who had brought their tiny children to this film, and I was like, I don't agree with this choice, but also, how could you know?
Right. But it's a great action scene, right? Yeah. There's a lot of fighting, a lot of bad guys, a lot of jumping and dashing and stuff.
Yeah, I wrote down bear trap kill with like a million exclamation marks. And then I was like, oh, this is just Rambo. Like, like the tree that falls with all the spikes. And then there's a guy that gets roped and driven into like this point, and they don't stop. They show you everything.
They show him like, his whole body exploding.
They show you this dude get split in half pretty much.
Okay, but this is also a different movie from what we had been watching. So if this movie had been shorter, the fight sequences would not have felt so random. And if they had let this final fight sequence breathe a little bit, it could have been like grotesquely funny. And instead, the whole time I was like, do I laugh? Were we going for a laugh?
I was cheering every time one of those bad guys got it. I was like, yes.
But so they basically can't, beat him until the foreigner shows up with this special serum that he's got to take him down. And then we see his greatest fear, and then he's supposed to die. And it turns out that Calypso had like another vial of the secret serum. She's like, I can't let my family's secret not be a secret anymore, even though I'm revealing it to you. And then she pours a whole jug down his, I guess a big gallon of stuff down his mouth. I'm exaggerating. It's a little tiny jar, but
it's a little vial.
But they hit the checklist, right? Because in all these Sony movies, they have a little spider moment. Madam Web had it, Morbius had it, and now Kraven.
Okay, but again, his greatest fear, the spiders falling from the ceiling. If you did not go into this movie already knowing he was a spider person, why would that be a thing?
Well, they explained that his mom, when she was mentally ill, so like she had a fear of spiders, and I think his fear was that he would also inherit that and maybe eventually become like his mom. That's what I got out of it. Maybe I'm giving too much credit.
Danny, this
for
could
it.
have been a stronger film, is my point.
Yeah, like if we had spent like 5 more minutes on the mom too, then we would understand why he hates his dad so much. Like, I mean, Russell Crowe does a really good job at like making you hate him already because that's what he's playing, but like make me feel something a little bit more for the family, right?
This is the part where I start feeling like this film was The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King in a bad way. Because you get to the end of The Lord of the Rings and you're when will this movie fucking end?
Yes.
Every scene is an additional scene. And like, I was not good to my body like Danny. I had to pee and I was not leaving that theater. So the end scene, there were like 3 end scenes. And I was like, I need to leave. Please let it stop.
He goes and talks to his brother, who is now safe and now running the mob, right? And then he's like, oh yeah, by the way, Dad left something for you at the house. And I'm like, how would Dad have left something at the house? He just killed him. Kraven had just killed him, right, in the movie. But he goes back to the house and he turned the lion head into a jacket. I don't know.
No, that was the rest of the lion. The rest, he used the rest because he only used the head, so the rest of the lion went to clothing.
The head was off the wall.
Yeah, it was off the wall.
Cannot gloss over him killing his dad. That was my all caps moment in these notes. And again, another moment that could have benefited from another 10 to 30 seconds of film time. So they meet in the woods and Kraven's like, Dad, how did they find me? It was definitely you. You sent the footage. You put all of these machinations in place. You sicked the rhino on me. And he was like, yes, I knew you would not do it if I had asked you. So I had to do this so you would get rid of him for me before he got rid of me. And I was like, okay. I thought it would be the brother doing the machinations, but okay, Russell Crowe did it. Yeah. And so, and then all of a sudden, this fucking bear charges out of the woods and eats Russell Crowe, and Kraven's just like walking off, and that's like I thought that was the end because then there was just like a cut. And then it was dark, and I was like,
"Is this right?" He looks for the bullets, and then you're like, "Oh, he's like he realized." Like they cut to his face, realizing that Kraven took the bullets from the gun. And then, of course, they also showed you that Kraven took the bullets.
Kraven took the bullets, because the audience cannot.
Before we talk about that last scene, I want to just go back because I don't want to skip over the rhino fight. About the big. They pay off the Chekhov's water buffalo that they showed us at the beginning of the movie, and they come back at the end. And I love it because he is getting his ass whooped by the rhino, which finally pays off whatever Dr. Warren did to this rhino guy. But of course, he remembers, right, what his dad told him about finding that one weakness when he was hunting the lion. So I guess that's what those 20 minutes were for. And he starts poking him in the little hole.
Yeah. I thought it was going to be a classic, you go for the eyes moment, right?
Yeah,
like, that's the only weak thing, but...
Does that mean all the rhino juice is coming out? What's happening? Because he starts turning back into, when he kills him. But I really just thought it was so silly, that last fight. Because it's really just 5 minutes of Kraven getting thrown around until he stabs him in the God, I almost said the little hole.
Well, they kind of, it's so funny. This whole movie, Kraven gets hurt, but he never gets hurt, right? Like an entire monastery and an avalanche falls on him and he gets up like it's no big deal. He gets stabbed, he gets scratched by a puma at one point that apparently he's friends with, which again, a potential cool moment that they just decided to skip over.
Yeah.
Because we'll get to it at the end. So I was frustrated at the end. I was just like, there didn't really seem to be any consequence to him getting into any action at all. Like, we knew that he was going to walk away, and there was really no chance that he would die outside of the guy shooting him with the tranquilizer, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's why they went to the whole thing of like, oh, you can't just kill Kraven. You got to incapacitate him.
Yeah.
I agree. It was frustrating. When the monastery fell on top of him, I was like, surely this moment will knock him out.
And then he just shows up behind the guys like, huh. It just goes to show you that I don't think the director or the editor understood the tone of what they were trying to do. Like, is this supposed to be a funny movie? Is this supposed to be serious? Because that moment, and I think that's how Aaron Taylor Johnson plays it. Like, it almost...
He plays it sarcastic.
Got the what is it? What's his name in the MCU? Quicksilver.
Like,
Quicksilver.
Didn't see that coming, did you?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I was like, I almost thought he was gonna say that.
I mean, look, that's definitely one of my big critiques of this film is it's not going in far enough to be a parody, but it's not straight enough to be like a serious superhero interpretation. Right. I like didn't quite know where I was. Before we get to that final post-credit scene that wasn't a post-credit scene, I want to go back to Russell Crowe getting mauled by a bear because I have to tell you why this was like it tickled me in a specific way, because Russell Crowe was Captain Jack Aubrey in 2003's Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World. And in an early Master and Commander book, post-Captain, Jack Aubrey has to sneak through Napoleonic era France without being like caught out for the English officer that he is. So his friend Stephen's solution to this problem is to disguise Jack as a bear. So he like dresses him in a bear skin, and Jack's like pretending to be a dancing bear, like as they walk through France. And so watching this scene of Russell Crowe getting eaten by the bear, I'm like, this is the closest I'll get to watching Post-Captain.
I really thought you were gonna be like, give me a Les Mis moment.
I know. I definitely thought that's where we were going somehow.
Russell Crowe's been in too many movies.
Yeah, so okay. Now that we're done with the bear fight or bear killing,
I'll never be done with the bear killing.
We have to get to the end of this movie, which is, the reveal that his brother's taking over the family. He's doing the business now, and Kraven tries to follow his brother as he leaves this club. His brother turns around. He's got Kraven's face. It's like, what's going on here? And we get this big reveal that he's like, people have always said that I was something of a chameleon, and he changes his face into this weird cartoonish CG monster thing for like a half second. And that's kind of where the movie ends. And I couldn't believe that was the end. Was that the end of the movie? Guys, I'm losing it. That was the end, right? Okay.
Yeah.
As a spider loony that watched all the 90s cartoon, I was very excited to see the chameleon.
It's a cool reveal. They've been threading it the entire movie. I have to give them credit. It works. It totally works. But unfortunately, like, the rest of the movie just like doesn't pay off in a way that is satisfying. Like, that ending isn't the payoff that I think the editing, directing team thought it was going to be, because there was no buildup to his brother doing anything else. I don't know. I felt very like deflated by the end.
I did write down short Kraven, because it is like, it's Kraven, but he's so much shorter. That felt like the Steve Rogers moment where they like just put a big head in a tiny body.
Sure.
I mean, they had that one shot like a few scenes before this where you like Kraven turns around and it looks like the brother is pointing a gun at him, but he's actually pointing it at one of the bad guys. And it's like, that could have been a moment where they chose to be like, oh, the brother was the bad guy all along. And like, here's how you misunderstood the story, and like unreliable narrator and all that. And instead they didn't. So yeah, I was really gunning for the end to be like Russell Crowe dying by bear mauling, because that would have just been very funny. And then I would have been like, oh, you did mean for this to be a funny film.
Yeah.
I mean, what would have been like a better ending for this? I mean, there's a million things that we could talk about improving, and I've already gone over like 5 different options in my head here, but like there's no ending here that puts us on the path of Kraven hunting Spider-Man, right? If the goal of this is to introduce us to the Spider-Verse via Kraven, as all the other ones have, I feel like even Venom has gone so far as to imply like, oh, let's kill a spider or something. I don't know. Like, I wish that there was something about Kraven accepting that he is the greatest hunter that there is, and that now that his dad is dead, he needs something bigger to hunt, right? Like, he needs his next big thrill. Like, I wish that could have been a thread throughout the story where he's like, I'm very good at this, but I also maybe have a problem about this. And there doesn't even need to be like an acknowledgement of like he thinks that the problem is bad. Like, he can relish in it. He's supposed to be a villain, right? He's a villain that we can see this side of. He's almost like a Punisher, where you're like, he's doing bad things, but I can root for him. And then at the end of the movie, he's going to hunt down someone that we, the audience, really like, Spider-Man, right? Like, why is that not the through line? Like, they don't even have to say that it's like a spider or a man. There's this new menace in New York. You need to find out. And again, if he had a team of people who were like listing people that he needs to hunt down, that could have been it. Like, but we don't have any of that. But go ahead, Danny.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, if you want to keep this like good guy Kraven you've kind of established here, you could even be like, he's got to go hunt Spider-Man because all the bad propaganda he gets from J. Jonah Jameson calling him a menace, right? And I was like, it could work. Whereas like this movie where you hunt Kraven. I mean, Kraven's hunting Spider-Man first, and then of course, like in all these movies, they put their differences aside to get after the real bad guy.
Sure.
Who could be Warren or the Chameleon or like a million other animals.
And the other option, if they wanted to do a post-credit scene and try to be like, no, we're going ahead with our universe, even though nobody wants this. They could. Even though the timelines don't work out, I think they could have had Dakota Johnson show up with her little Madame Web shades and be like, your services are needed. Like, she could have had her Nick Fury moment and be like, it's time to assemble.
The way that they portray her character at the end of Madame Web is basically like, hey, you're kind of like Nick Fury. You're kind of uniting all the spider people. You have the potential to. I don't know. What are you going to do about this movie, guys? I don't know.
I'll tell you this.
Do a trilogy.
You could offer me $100. I could not tell you what happened to Calypso at the end of this movie.
She's lawyering?
I don't know what she like. I don't know where she went, what she's doing.
She went back to lawyering.
I guess so.
Danny, you asked me about her costumes. The only one that registered for me is where she's like at the geodesic dome in the middle of Russia, and it turns out like she knows how to use a bow and arrow. She's got a lot of secrets, blah, blah, blah. She's wearing this really cool like black tank top.
Yeah.
Like that. It was like, you're in a superhero movie. This is the only sartorial choice that indicates that you're in a superhero movie.
And I don't know exactly what her outfit is in the comics, but like all her work outfits were like pretty much a layer of a black, like a black outfit, some kind of base black outfit with the gold trim of like either jewelry or whatever the case may be. And I was like, I need to go Google what she looks like in the comics because it feels like they only had one option.
I'm going to tell you guys, don't Google it.
Oh, am I going to be mad?
It's maybe not great. It's not great. So Calypso also, by the way, I'm just gonna nitpick on this because I can't help it. We're about to wrap up, I promise, listeners. So Calypso was a lawyer in New York, and then she just moved to London, became a lawyer in London because law's the same. Okay,
yeah,
that's cool.
Doesn't she have to wear the little barrister wig?
Yeah, then you have to.
Whatever?
I don't know.
Okay,
that bothered me, but
I gotta say, I'm looking at a picture of this costume, and I don't know the timeline off the top of my head of when these characters were created or anything, but this is another classic case of DC and Marvel keep copying each other, because Calypso is wearing like a version of what Vixen wears over in DC. Like aesthetically, they're the same character, not knowing anything about their powers. Like that's literally what they're both wearing. Yeah, it's the same picture.
It's basically the same. I was going to say Chitara almost, but that's maybe a little bit too much of a stretch.
Right, but like, you know, it's not exactly like they're breaking new ground here with this type of character. And then the other thing, honestly, one of the first things that I thought while watching this film that just like kept persisting. This is like my overall takeaway while watching this film, besides it needed better editing. I thought this is the closest that I am going to get to seeing a Huntress movie. Because over in DC, Huntress is the daughter of a mobster who grows up and goes on a vendetta spree killing mobsters that brings her into conflict with the Batman because she's killing people and that's not cool, and that sets up our conflict. And so watching this movie, I was like, this is the boy Huntress. I'm just watching the same character. He's just not wearing a bikini. Like, give this boy a cape.
Danny, I'm curious to get your thoughts here, and then I will wrap this up here. What are your final thoughts on Kraven the Hunter 2024?
So the one thing I want to point out is he does get the vest at the end of the movie, right? His dad gives it to him or whatever.
Yeah.
In a lot of the trailers, we see him doing stuff with the vest. So none of that ever happened in the movie, which is part of Sony's bait and switch marketing tactics that they have done for every single one of their movies, except maybe the Venom ones. Like Madam Web, they made it feel like it was going to be about all the Spider-Women doing Spider-Women stuff.
Yeah.
And then also with Morbius, there was like Spider-Man's there and the Vulture is there, and it's like none of that ever happened in the movie. So bad on you, Sony, for just baiting and like making it seem like we're gonna get some spider stuff in your movies, and you just get us there, and it doesn't happen. And I think the big problem with Sony movies overall, like these 6 movies and this not Spider-Man universe they created, is that they probably think that they are like the source material is beneath them. You can tell because they have look, I haven't read a lot of Kraven stories, but I know they're there. I haven't read a lot of Morbius things, but there's stories there. They don't have to create these convoluted things that they give us. Like maybe for Madam Web you do. I don't know. I don't think there's that many comics of that one character. But yeah, that was just really my problem. I feel like Venom was the closest to like being like, yeah, Venom's cool. Like Venom can probably stand on his own. He's cool enough, right? But outside of all these, like you need Spider-Man, so they need to figure out whatever they're gonna do next, because they're not selling back to Marvel.
Yeah,
they need to figure out how to get a Spider-Man of some sort in their live action stuff if they want these things to work.
I think it's funny because I think Morbius had the potential to stand on its own. Because Morbius is a very interesting character. If you lean into like the spooky extra supernatural stuff, they refuse to do that, right? I mean, they tried. There's like, oh, another vampire, cool. So it's
Matt
like,
Smith carried that film.
Matt Smith is not Morbius, right? Like that was the movie.
Yeah.
This one, there was no clear like real antagonist. It like again, this feels like it's just a hollowed out shell of a film.
Yeah.
That like someone pieced together. And while there are plenty of moments that I like at the beginning of my notes here, I tried to be very positive. Like I have so many angry thoughts, but this movie had a lot of potential in the sense that there was like Kraven's Lair probably was supposed to be a really cool thing in the movie. Keeping it all centralized to London and Russia was smart, right? Like that's smart. Just keep it away from anywhere that could be associated with Venom or Morbius or Spider-Man. Like Kraven's fear of spiders, would have loved to see that like at the midway point or something, and then have a big reveal at the end. That's a great idea. Kraven kicking dudes' asses all over the place. Awesome. And the hunting was awesome, right? But again, the whole movie just falls flat because you can't really tell what the direction is. And so for all the things that I did like, it ultimately is just like, I called it a belch of a death knell for Sony on all of these movies, because like, what are they going to do after this? And the answer is probably something worse, which is insane to me that much money can be spent on something that is so half-baked. But here's where we are. And it's really unfortunate because, again, of all of Morbius, of Venom 2, we'll just put that in there. And this one, like, I feel like Kraven had the potential to be really, really good. And someone at the last minute said, we can't do that storyline. And I don't know what that is, but it would have probably been much better. And that's really, really unfortunate.
Yeah,
so
this movie was supposed to come out a year before it actually came out, and it's so wild that it was just delays after delays.
Reshoots. Yeah. Like that's what that says to me. Anyway, so I think that's where we'll wrap today. Boy, oh boy, I cannot wait to watch the triple threat movies of Madam Web, Morbius, and Kraven back to back to back, just to see what insane plot you could string together. Honestly, I hope a fan edit ends up out there, or there's like a Blu-ray that has like extra scenes in some capacity. I don't know if Sony even does that, where someone strings together these movies into some cohesive story between the three of them. Who knows? Fan edits are crazy, but I think that's where we're going to call it for tonight, guys. I appreciate you, and I appreciate you listening, everybody out there, to us rambling for 50 minutes straight. I don't know if we're ever going to do one of these again, but, thanks for listening on Patreon. We appreciate you.
I want them to do a full trilogy. I believe they can do it. Go, Sony. Commit the resources.
All right. Well, I guess we'll send this episode directly to the directors and executives at Sony and let them know how we feel. But until next time, I'll say comics are good. Sometimes movies are good, but this one was not. See everybody.